Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, 21st chapter, text number 3. And the Sanskrit is Tasya vai duhita brahman devahuti ti vishruta patni prajapatir ukta kardamasya tvayanaga. Word for word is Tasya, of that Manu, vai, indeed, duhita, the daughter, Brahman, Brahman, O holy Brahmana, Devahuti, named Devahuti, the iti, thus, Vishruta, was known, Patni, wife, Prajapatehe, O Lord of created beings, Ukta, has been spoken of, Kardamasya, of Kardama Muni, Tvaya, by you, Anaga, O sinless one. Translation: O holy Brahmana, O sinless one, you have spoken of his daughter, known by the name Devahuti, as the wife of the sage Kardama, the lord of created beings. Purport. Here we are speaking of Swayambhuva Manu, but in Bhagavad Gita we hear about Vaivasvata Manu. The present age belongs to the Vaivasvata Manu. Swayambhuva Manu was previously ruling, and his history begins from the Varaha age, or the millennium when the Lord appeared as the boar. There are 14 Manus in one day of the life of Brahman, and in the life of each Manu, there are particular incidents. The Vaivasvata Manu of Bhagavad Gita is different from Swayambhuva Manu. In the next verse, number 4, is Tasyam savai mahayogi yuktayam yoga lakshanai sasarja katidha viryam tanme shushrusave vada. Word for word. Tasyam, in her, saha Kardama Muni, vai, in fact, Mahayogi, great mystic yogi, Yuktayam, endowed, Yoga Lakshanai, with the eightfold symptoms of yogic perfection, Sasarja, propagated, Katidha, how many times, Viryam, offspring, Tat, that narration, Me, to me, Save, who am eager to hear, Vada, tell. Translation: how many offspring did that great yogi beget through the princess who was endowed with eightfold perfection in the yoga principles? Oh, pray tell me this, for I am eager to hear it. Purport. Here Vidura inquired about Kardama Muni and his wife Devahuti and about their children. It is described here that Devahuti was very much advanced in the performance of eightfold yoga. The 8 divisions of yoga performance are described as 1. Control of the senses. 2. Strict following of the rules and regulations. 3. Practice of the different sitting postures. 4. Control of the breath. 5. Withdrawing the senses from sense objects. 6. Concentration of the mind. 7. Meditation. And 8. Self-realization. After self-realization, there are 8 further perfectional stages, which are called yoga siddhis. The husband and wife, Kardama and Devahuti, were advanced in yoga practice. The husband was a Mahayogi, great mystic, and the wife was a Yoga Lakshana, or one advanced in yoga. They united and produced children. Formerly, after making their lives perfect, great sages and saintly persons used to beget children. Otherwise, they strictly observed the rules and regulations of celibacy. Brahmacharya, following the rules and regulations of celibacy, is required for perfection of self-realization and mystic power. There is no recommendation in the Vedic scriptures that one can go on enjoying material sense gratification at one's whims as one likes, and at the same time become a great meditator by paying a rascal some money. Om Ajnanaatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So in this new chapter 21 of third canto, we're hearing the discussions between Manu and Kardama, and it's going to continue from the last chapters, in the last discussions. They're going to continue discussing the more or less origins of the universe and the very early histories of the progenitors, and how the different species were created and from whom they were created and in what order, how many, like all throughout this canto, it's a lot about progeny and dynasty and creation, those kinds of things. So yes, I mean, Prabhupada, in the first verse that we discussed, verse number 3, Prabhupada makes the clear delineation that in this verse, we're speaking of Swayambhuva Manu, which of course is different from the Vaivasvata Manu that we hear in Bhagavad Gita, because the age we're in belongs to Vaivasvata. But Swayambhuva was the Manu for the age beginning with Varahadev, and the Lord appeared as Lord Bor. And it's interesting that in Shastra, you'll find all over in Shastra, but including in the lives of great personalities like the Manus, that their lifespans and those personalities are remembered for specific activities. Like, for example, Srimad Bhagavatam is remembered throughout all Vedic literature as I'm trying to remember, is remembered as the Purana in which Lord Varaha, I believe, is the most how do you say, is considered one of the very essential pastimes of the Shastras, the appearance of Lord Bor. And there's different Lord Bor appears in different colors. So it's mentioned that in this age and in this time for us on earth, the Bhagavatam that we have is specifically remembered for a few things, and that's one of them, that the appearance of Lord Bor. So different personalities are remembered for particular incidents, not necessarily when they're born and when they die, but what they actually did in their lives. So that's an interesting thing, which often we also in our lives, that's the way we think. We don't think, I was born, I died, but we think, well, what did this personality do? Where they're remembered for what they've done, great things, great performance, great activities that they've performed. And in the next verse, number 4, it's quite a few interesting points. So the first that struck me was Prabhupada's bringing up the point of yogis begetting children, which obviously off the bat seems quite contradictory, because we have quite a stereotyped idea of what a yogi is, sitting on deerskin in the Himalayas, avoiding association with anyone, very strictly controlling all of the senses and the mind, and practicing tapasya, austerity. But we hear about yogis begetting children. So yeah, this is interesting because then it's explained later in the purport that great souls, great yogis, great spiritual practitioners, they should first make themselves perfect. They should become mature in the process of self-realization, and then they can, or in many cases, they should have children. And the reason for that is that it's nice to deliver oneself. It's nice to save oneself from the cycle of birth and death. But very great personalities, they consider more than that. They consider that, let me deliver myself, let me achieve, a high level of transcendental realization myself, and then let me create offspring that will also benefit the society, that will be great souls who can carry on this tradition of sharing knowledge and purifying civilization, purifying the living entities in this material world. So that was the idea, that first become mature in the process of self-realization, so that when you do create offspring, you're bringing in a great soul. And this is the whole concept, Vedic concept of samskaras. So Garbhadan samskara, of course, is the beginning, which is purifying one's consciousness before begetting children, so that you're not just bringing in another, sinful, conditioned living entity into the world, but you actually purify your consciousness as much as you can, and then you beget children as an act of devotion to Krishna, trying to bring in one of his devotees, trying to bring a great soul into this world to do his bidding. So this is correlated by an important verse in the 5th canto, 5th chapter, verse number 18, where it's directly said, this verse, Guru nasasyat, svajano nasasyat, said that one who cannot deliver his dependents from the path of repeated birth and death should never become a spiritual master, a father, a husband, a mother, or a worshipable demigod. So this is a very important instruction, that it's a huge responsibility to become any of these things, especially to bring a living entity into this world and then be completely responsible for that entity's progression and deliverance from the cycle of birth and death. It's a great responsibility, and it's not something which is just whimsical, like we see often with sex life in the material world and in modern society. There's no consideration of the effects of what you're doing. It's just, for pleasure, for enjoyment, for 5 minutes or whatever, but you don't consider the 20, years that you're fully responsible for the development and training and care of that living entity, until they're, more responsible for themselves than before, but still you have a role to play as a father or a mother. So it's a great burden of responsibility, not to be taken lightly. And another interesting point that is in this verse number 4 is, which we see all over Shastra, so many places, that the superiority of bhakti and bhakti yoga or upasana kanda over jnana kanda, karma kanda, and the other systems of liberation, self-realization, perfection. And that's that by bhakti yoga, one automatically, they practice all of these Ashtanga yoga principles, but they do it in a natural way. It's not that it's teeth grindingly difficult and severe tapasya, in the middle of the desert, surrounded by fires, or in the snowy Himalayas, and then you plunge in the ice cold waters. So the point of bhakti is that it's Kevala Ananda Kanda. It's always blissful. It's the path of bliss. It's not easy necessarily, but it's very joyfully performed, as we hear. So one way to think of it is it's that we have all these urges, like, for example, the urge of the senses, that the eyes want to see beautiful things, the tongue wants to taste beautiful things, the ears want to hear beautiful things. And the senses are like a raging river that they're trying to meet their sense objects. So if you have two ways of controlling a river. One is you can try and dam it. So you can try and just block it with a huge structure and regulate the process that way, which is very, very, very difficult. And many times dams are destroyed or malfunction or break or whatever. So that's one way. Or you have a simple other way in which you divert it. So you just utilize the water in a direction that you would like to, rather than trying to stop it. So that's the process of bhakti yoga, that we don't deny the tongue nice palatable things to eat. We don't deny the eyes beautiful things to see. We don't deny the ears beautiful things to hear, but we connect it all with Krishna. So we take very nice prasadam. We see the beautiful form of the deities. We hear the sweet kirtan and glorifications of the Lord in Shastra. And not only that, but we also appreciate the presence of Krishna in the material world everywhere by having that vision, cultivating that vision of seeing him in everything. So that when we see the sunrise, we see this is one of the eyes of Krishna. There's other descriptions about how the sun is connected to Krishna. But yeah, it's the beautiful effulgent rays of Krishna. When we see the darkish, blackish clouds in the sky, we think, oh, this is the, Ganasham, the Sham Sundar, like color of Krishna's body. So all these different kinds of things, we connect it with Krishna and see Krishna in the world. So there's many ways that we can easily perceive Krishna here. So I thought it interesting, this idea of the eightfold yoga system that we always hear about, and their steps, which are given in Sanskrit, is yama, the rules and regulations. So yama, niyama, asana, pranayam, pratyahar, dharana, dhyan, and samadhi. So it cultivates in samadhi, and samadhi is understood to be being fixed in consciousness on Paramatma, or Krishna within the heart. And that's why, because some people will ask, well, how does bhakti jump over all these steps? Actually, it doesn't really jump over all of them, but you start off with the practice of yama. We do have all these things. We have the rules and regulations, what to do, what not to do. And Prabhupada would say in some places, pranayama is automatically practiced by chanting japa, that your breath is controlled because you do a certain number of in-breaths and out-breaths while you're chanting. And then, giving up certain things, that's automatically there in bhakti. Dhyana, meditation, of course, is obviously there. And it cultivates in samadhi. That's the whole purpose of our practice, is that to be fixed in consciousness on Krishna. And through bhakti, it's actually a very easy thing to fix one's mind on Krishna because he's so attractive. He's all attractive. It's not that you have to practice very severe, Krishna. We have this verse, austerities, to grind one's teeth and pull the mind back towards Krishna. But if one practices bhakti properly, it's very easy. It's very sweet. One's mind comes to the point of naturally being attracted to Krishna, which is paralleled by the yogis, jnanis, or materialistic persons, which we have this verse in Bhagavatam 10:32, Yene Ravindaksha Vimuktamaninas, that purport of that is, someone may say that aside from devotees who always seek shelter at the Lord's lotus feet, there are those who are not devotees, but who have accepted different processes for attaining salvation. What happens to them? In answer to this question, Lord Brahma and the other demigods said, O lotus-eyed Lord, although non-devotees who accept severe austerities and penances to achieve the highest position may think themselves liberated, their intelligence is impure. They fall down from their position of imagined superiority because they have no regard for your lotus feet. So even though they may practice very severe austerities and attain some vimuktamaninas, means imagined liberation, or some imagined platform of mukti, even though they may imagine that, actually it's they have to fall down from that because their intelligence is impure. They haven't understood the whole purpose of the process, which is to attain samadhi, attain pure love and pure meditation, fixed one's mind and consciousness and soul on service to Krishna. So, yeah, because they don't know the shelter of the Lord's lotus feet, they must fall down. So there's a lot of other things we could discuss, but I actually have another class at 8, so I have to, maybe we can have 1 or 2 questions, and then I'm going to have to exit at 8 o'clock. If anyone has a question or comment they would like to share.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances. All glory to Prabhupada.
Please accept mine, Jai Prabhupada.
Thank you, Prabhu, for the really nice class. Really appreciated some of the points that you mentioned. This verse kind of brought about a lot of, it's a lot of discussion as to, the general topic of perfecting one's life and then producing children for service. At the same time, many who are perfected become liberated souls, and they uplift the whole world. And so I guess it's just a matter of personal taste, how a devotee goes about doing it. Of course, if there's a direct instruction from the Lord, then that's a different thing. But it's kind of like always the discussion. You can serve the Lord as a grahastha, you can serve the Lord as a sannyasi. Generally, you can serve him more as a renunciate, because household life takes a lot of time. So yes, you can produce Krishna conscious children, but then there's a huge responsibility and time commitment that comes with that, which does seem to, at least this is one of the reasons Lord Chaitanya left home, is because it does, even though he's perfectly Krishna conscious, it does kind of limit your capacity for delivering the rest of the world, let's say.
Those are great points. I've thought about that sometimes. It is interesting, this idea of the personal choice between whether to just give up everything oneself and more or less like focus on one's own liberation and salvation, and be very careful and not be involved with the material world. And then what seems externally, unless you have the Krishna conscious lens, to like complete opposite, getting completely involved in the material world and having children and a house and a car and a job and all these kind of things, and like just really having to be very connected to the world in a practical way. It's very interesting, that concept of different proclivities, because there's many examples like you mentioned in Shastra where someone's ordered, like by Lord Brahma, okay, now you need to procreate children, you need to do all these kinds of things. And then we have other examples where, like for example, Gorky showed us Babaji, who didn't even want to take disciples, what to speak of children, was just so against having any possibility of having to, respond, what do you say? Any possibility of unfulfilled commitments or liabilities to persons within the world or the world itself. And it's quite interesting because I always think when I think of good examples of a personality who in modern times, of who has connected oneself in the sense with Krishna that they, create many facilities for service by having children and establishing a temple, or, preaching in a community, doing all these kinds of things. There's so many good examples. Like, yourself and your family are amazing examples in Boise and here. And then there's also Tukaram Prabhu in Laguna Beach. He has like, I think 12 children, and they're all, they're all very interested in Krishna consciousness, and they themselves are now taking up preaching and leadership roles. And so it's like, it's kind of like expanding the army, if you, of course, sannyasis are powerful, but it's like a one-man show, for preaching in the modern context, and for a lot of, it's more relatable if you have someone that's like kind of coming from where you are, and they're doing kind of similar thing to you, but they're adding Krishna, and they're, clearly showing the fruits of that in their consciousness. So, kind of expanding, it's more useful to have 10 arms than have 2 if they're functioning and useful and going to help serve the mission. So, that's a nice point.
Yes, and your one wonderful response reminded me of, in the same family, right? We have Bhaktivinoda Thakur and we have Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur.
Yeah,
both of them doing the same work, but in terms of ashram, opposite ways.
right. Yeah, yeah, it's true. Yeah, it's very interesting. It's almost like Krishna personally guides the proclivity or the situation for each person. It's very interesting. It's like, this service is for you, and this service is for you. Yeah.
Yes. Interesting.
Yeah. Okay. I would love to discuss more, but unfortunately, I will have to head out because I have another class. Started 3 minutes ago. Thank you very much, dear devotees, for your coming to glorify Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Vaishnav Bhakta